Millionaire bought a new mansion for his mistress, not knowing his pregnant wife was living in the basement. Have you ever heard a secret so shocking it makes your heart race and leaves you desperate to know every scandalous detail? That's exactly what happened when an eccentric millionaire purchased a brand new mansion as a gift for his glamorous mistress, blissfully unaware that his pregnant wife had already taken up residence in the cellar below. This twisted tale of betrayal, secrets, and ultimate redemption will leave you breathless, eager to uncover how one man's web of lies unravels in the most jaw-dropping way imaginable. Strap in for a wild ride, because what's hidden beneath the floorboards is far darker than anyone could have guessed. Leonard Leo Hathaway was the kind of man people whispered about over champagne flutes at high society galas. At just 38 years old, he had risen from a humble background in rural Idaho to become the CEO of the multi-million-dollar Hathaway Investments, with offices around the world. Handsome, sharp-witted, and relentlessly ambitious, Leo knew how to work a room. He wielded his success like a golden scepter, a testament to what grit and cunning could achieve. Though he was married to a beautiful woman named Kathleen, their union appeared to be more of a trophy partnership than a love match. She came from old money, her family name revered among society circles. Leo's early success had caught her eye. She'd been charmed by his passion and brilliance. Their wedding, lavish and well documented in magazines, made them the envy of the city. But behind the magazine covers and forced smiles, something was amiss. Kathleen, now 35, bore a quiet grace. She had studied art history at a prestigious university and dreamed of one day curating her own gallery. But her life took a turn when she married Leo. She became his ornament, following him on business trips, smiling for the cameras, and offering polite conversation at dinners filled with other corporate titans. She tried to maintain an image that everything was all right, though deep within, she felt more like a displaced bystander than an actual partner. Behind the closed doors of their sprawling penthouse in Seattle, tensions simmered. Leo, always glued to his phone, scheduling meetings with overseas clients and forging new deals, spent more time at the office than with Kathleen. On the rare evenings when they did dine together, the conversation was courteous yet hollow. At night, Kathleen would sometimes wake to an empty bed. He'd slip into the penthouse in the early morning hours, reeking of expensive scotch and a trace of perfume she didn't recognize. Still, Kathleen tried to ignore the warning signs. After all, appearances had to be kept. Her family's reputation mattered. When she suspected Leo of cheating, she pushed down the thought and forced a smile. Perhaps he truly had another late-night business meeting, or he'd been networking with wealthy investors. She reminded herself that mistrust could poison a marriage, and the consequences could be dire if this house of cards collapsed. Then, one morning, Kathleen discovered a smudge of lipstick on Leo's immaculate white shirt. It was the color of rubies, a shade she had never worn. Despite her best efforts to remain composed, anger flared inside her. She kept quiet until he returned from the shower, tie draped around his neck, eyes on his phone as usual. "Leo," she began calmly. "What's this?" She held up his shirt, the glaring smudge circled by her trembling finger. He paused, but only briefly, before launching into a well-rehearsed explanation. "A colleague spilled her drink on me last night," he said. "You know how it is at these high-end business receptions. Champagne, wine, and clumsy toasts." Kathleen's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. "That's lipstick, Leo, not wine," he shrugged. She apologized profusely. "I thought it was wine at first. Must have been some fancy lipstick that smudged off." Every fiber in Kathleen's body screamed at her to confront him, but his dismissive tone, combined with the knowledge that her family would be humiliated by a scandal, forced her into silence. She muttered, Be more careful next time, and turned away. Kathleen was no fool. In her gut, she knew that Leo had a mistress. Even in the insulated world of high society, rumors were swirling. A young socialite by the name of Cassandra Mendez was said to accompany him to events Kathleen was carefully left out of. She was rumored to be in her mid-20s, drop-dead gorgeous, and an up-and-coming interior designer. Friends hinted that Cassandra had designed a few of Hathaway Investments' offices free of charge, of course building her own portfolio by clinging to Leo's coattails. Meanwhile, Kathleen confided in her best friend from college, Sophia Russell. "Should I just walk away?" she asked over the phone one night, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Or should I confront him with what I know?" Sophia's voice was resolute. "Confront him. You don't deserve to live in the shadows of another woman's manipulations. And you definitely don't deserve to be humiliated like this." Kathleen knew Sophia was right, but she needed more than just accusations. She needed proof. Over the following weeks, Kathleen's suspicions grew. A cryptic text message, a hurried phone call, and frequent business trips with uncharacteristically short notice all fueled her need for answers. She decided to hire a private investigator named Benjamin Calder, an unassuming man with a dogged reputation for uncovering the ugliest of secrets. "I've handled cases for people much more powerful than your husband," Calder had assured her. "If he's stepping out, I'll find out with whom, when, and where." Days turned into weeks as Kathleen awaited Calder's findings. Her nights were sleepless, haunted by images of Leo and Cassandra locked in some passionate embrace. Yet, a strangest irony loomed. She learned she was pregnant. The test turned positive while Leo was away on another business trip, presumably with Cassandra. Kathleen stared at the result for hours, tears collecting on the sink's marble counter. When Leo returned 2 days later, looking triumphant and smelling again faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers, Kathleen decided not to tell him yet. Part of her wanted to preserve a glimmer of hope for their family, but another part of her was terrified that this child might be a pawn in the ongoing power struggle that was their marriage. She had to know the truth about Leo's double life before she could decide what to do next. It was a crisp morning when Calder slipped a manila folder into Kathleen's hands. They were seated at a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle. He spoke in a low voice, barely above a whisper. "You were right about Cassandra," Calder said, eyes darting around to ensure privacy. "He's been seeing her for over a year. They usually meet at the penthouse Leo keeps in Portland under a shell company's name." Kathleen swallowed a lump of bitterness. "I see." Calder looked torn. "There's more," he said, sliding 2 photos from the folder. One showed Leo meeting a real estate agent outside a gated estate. The second captured Cassandra stepping out of a sleek black car, wearing sunglasses, and approaching the same gate. "Leo bought a house?" Kathleen asked, voice trembling. "A mansion, actually," Calder confirmed. "According to the property records, it was purchased in Cassandra's name about a week ago. Gated community, huge estate, state-of-the-art security, a real fortress of privacy." Kathleen stared at the photos, her fingers trembling. "He's setting her up, probably to keep her close in luxury. Meanwhile, I'm..." She paused, pressing a hand to her stomach as the reality of her pregnancy gnawed at her soul. Calder's gaze dropped to her hand. "Are you okay, Mrs. Hathaway?" "Yes," she whispered through clenched teeth. "I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Calder. I appreciate your work, but I think I'll have to handle it from here." Kathleen's mind spun as she considered her next step. She had spent her entire life catering to the demands of others, her parents, society, then Leo. Now, with a child on the way, she realized it was time to think about what she truly wanted. Before she could muster the courage to confront him, however, tragedy struck. Kathleen received a frantic call from her mother, Harriet Cook, who had been dealing with serious health issues. Harriet's condition had worsened, and doctors advised immediate surgery. Kathleen rushed to her family's estate in Connecticut, leaving Leo in Seattle, lost in his illusions of freedom. She spent weeks tending to her mother, barely responding to Leo's sporadic texts. He seemed more concerned about appearances than about his wife's emotional state. Each day in Connecticut felt like a step away from the life she once knew. Kathleen helped organize Harriet's medical care, forging a new sense of independence in the process. She secretly began looking for options that might allow her to lead a peaceful life, possibly away from Leo. However, Harriet's recovery was slow and draining, both financially and emotionally. Kathleen's father had passed away years before, leaving Harriet with modest funds. Kathleen considered telling Leo that she needed more money to help with the medical bills, but she refused to stoop to that. Instead, she began reaching out to old acquaintances from her art history days to see if any job opportunities were available. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Leo luxuriated in his carefully cultivated double life. With Kathleen's extended absence, he felt free to spend more time with Cassandra, savoring the new mansion he had bought for her in Bellevue. It was a 2-hour drive from Seattle, far enough to remain discreet, yet close enough to satisfy his whims. The mansion in Bellevue was an architectural marvel. Towering pillars graced the entrance, and the wrought iron gates opened into a sprawling courtyard lined with manicured hedges and a shimmering fountain. Inside, the floors were polished marble, and chandeliers sparkled overhead like captured starlight. Cassandra delighted in furnishing each room with luxurious pieces imported from Europe. Leo spared no expense. He was enamored with the idea of a haven just for them. What Leo didn't know was that the mansion came with a peculiar basement suite. The real estate agent had mentioned it in passing as a partially finished area below the main floor, accessible through a small corridor near the kitchen. It was rumored to be built during Prohibition, featuring hidden corridors and old storage rooms, some leading to concealed entrances on the estate grounds. Curiosity piqued. Cassandra wanted to explore, imagining a wine cellar or perhaps a stylish underground lounge. But on the day they moved in a few of her belongings, a fierce argument about money erupted. Cassandra demanded a sports car. Leo balked at the suggestion, telling her she was already spending too much. Heated words were exchanged, and Cassandra drove back to her previous apartment in a rage, leaving Leo alone in the cavernous mansion. Unbeknownst to them, the staff who had maintained the mansion for the previous owner had left it less than a week ago. The basement was not just partially finished, it was rigged with old piping and dusty corridors that carried sound in a strange echo through the walls. During a rare moment of reflection, Leo began to feel uneasy. The guilt of his affair had become a gnawing sensation in his gut. He couldn't quite shake the image of Kathleen, so composed and gentle. It occurred to him that she hadn't pressed him for money for her mother's care. Usually, a wealthy husband would be the first line of support, right? He picked up his phone and dialed Kathleen's number. She answered with cool politeness, the distance obvious in her tone. "How's your mother?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. "She's stable," Kathleen replied, exhaling deeply. "Thanks for asking." For a moment, Leo almost confessed the entire situation, the mansion, Cassandra, the confusion that roiled within him. But he stopped himself. Such honesty wasn't in his nature. Instead, he told Kathleen he wanted her to come home once Harriet stabilized. She said nothing of her pregnancy, unsure if the timing was right. When the call ended, Leo stared at his reflection in the window. Who had he become? An unscrupulous man, cheating on his wife, and so detached from morality that a part of him wondered if Kathleen might suspect everything already. 3 weeks later, Harriet's condition had improved significantly. She insisted Kathleen return to Seattle, sensing that her daughter had unresolved issues waiting. With reluctance and a glimmer of dread, Kathleen flew back to her penthouse, anticipating a confrontation. Stepping inside, she felt an eerie familiarity, the same stark decor, the same unnerving silence. Only this time, a bold swirl of perfume hung in the air. She was certain it was Cassandra's signature fragrance, the one that seemed to taunt her every time she caught a hint of it on Leo. Leo rushed out to greet her. "Kathleen," he said, voice brimming with forced cheer, "I've missed you." She gave him a perfunctory hug. "Missed you too," she lied, her stomach churning. They sat at the dining table, a feast of catered dishes laid out, each plate arranged with meticulous perfection. Kathleen picked at her food, stomach twisting, while Leo tried to regale her with stories of recent investment deals. Finally, she couldn't stand it any longer. "Are you seeing someone else?" she asked abruptly, meeting his gaze with steely determination. Leo seemed startled, his fork clattering onto the porcelain plate. "What? Why would you ask that?" "Because I know, Leo," she said, voice steady but cold. "I hired an investigator." His face paled. "Kathleen," she raised a hand, silencing him. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I just want to know where we stand." The room went silent. Eventually, Leo broke the tension with a stammered admission. "Yes," he said, voice cracking slightly. "There's someone else. But let me explain." She sighed, the weight of her pregnancy pressing on her mind. "Go ahead." Leo confessed the affair, but painted it as a fleeting distraction, a mistake. He didn't mention the mansion. He didn't mention Cassandra's name. He tried to save face, pleading that he had never meant to hurt Kathleen. They argued for what felt like hours, tears and accusations flying like sparks in a room filled with explosive tension. Finally, Kathleen rose to her feet, trembling. "I'm pregnant, Leo," she whispered, voice shaking. "Before you ask, it's yours." Leo's eyes widened. 1,000 emotions flickered across his face, fear, guilt, and perhaps a trace of hope. "We can fix this," he insisted, stepping toward her. "This doesn't have to be the end." Kathleen held up her hand again, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm not sure yet." She walked out, leaving him in the echoing silence of the penthouse. The next morning, Leo realized that half measures wouldn't salvage his marriage. He decided to come clean about the mansion. But when he attempted to call Kathleen, his calls went straight to voicemail. Panicked, he tried to find her at her favorite cafe, but she wasn't there. He even tried calling Harriet's estate in Connecticut, where the housekeeper said Kathleen wasn't visiting. Later that afternoon, Cassandra called, demanding that Leo visit her at their house. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the house was in her name. If Kathleen found out about it through legal channels, all his financial manipulations might be laid bare. Feeling a sense of dread, he promised Cassandra he'd be over that evening. Unbeknownst to him, Kathleen had already discovered the mansion's existence through Calder's updated investigation. Furious and emboldened, she resolved to gather more information. In a move that would set the stage for a twisted confrontation, Kathleen obtained the property's address from Calder and decided she had to see it for herself. That very night, Kathleen drove to Bellevue, adrenaline pumping. The gates to the estate were closed, but in a stroke of dramatic irony, they malfunctioned just as she arrived, allowing her to slip in behind a delivery truck without the security cameras catching a clear shot of her license plate. Cassandra had left earlier to meet a friend, leaving the mansion empty. Lights glowed in a few upstairs windows. Kathleen, overwhelmed by the scale of the place, quietly parked her car behind a line of hedges. She slipped inside through a side door that appeared to have been left unlocked, perhaps by a careless maintenance worker. Her heart pounded as she wandered the corridors, hushed and grand, the marble floors reflecting her tense figure. She had no plan but to gather enough evidence to confirm that Leo had bought this palatial estate under Cassandra's name. The anger swelling in her chest guided her every step. Eventually, she found a staircase leading down, Remembering the property's rumored secret basement, she followed the winding passage, the air growing colder with every step. The basement was a maze of forgotten rooms, some lit by a single flickering bulb, others swallowed entirely by darkness. Sprawled across one wall was a cluster of dusty boxes and old furniture. Then Kathleen spotted a room that looked recently used. It had a small bed, a makeshift dresser, and a mirror leaning against the wall. A few leftover food wrappers lay crumpled on a table. Her eyes darted around, noticing a space heater plugged into a wall socket. Had someone been living here? With growing unease, she pushed open another door. This one led into a smaller, hidden corridor that opened into a tidy storage space. Stunned, she realized it had been converted into a small living area, complete with a sink, microwave, and even a small fridge. 1,000 questions bombarded her mind. Who on earth was living in the basement of the mansion Leo had gifted to his mistress? Kathleen's shock was soon overshadowed by a wave of dizziness, a symptom of her pregnancy that she hadn't fully gotten used to. She sank into a nearby chair, pressing a trembling hand against her belly. She felt the faintest flutter inside her, a reminder that she was no longer alone in her body. She closed her eyes, collecting herself, then stood and explored the makeshift living quarters more thoroughly. A sense of pity intermingled with her anger. This room was cramped, hidden from the glittering luxury above. What sort of twisted arrangement was happening here? Was Cassandra aware of this occupant, or was it some leftover occupant from the mansion's previous owner? An idea took root in her mind. If she wanted to gather leverage against Leo, protect herself and her unborn child from any financial or legal entanglement, maybe she could quietly observe who was using this space and why. This was, after all, a valuable piece of property that might play a significant role in their future divorce settlement. Summoning all her courage, Kathleen decided to hide until someone returned to the basement. She found a vacant storage room adjacent to the makeshift apartment, carefully ducking behind a stack of dusty crates. She felt a surge of adrenaline, as though she were in a spy movie. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she remained resolute, determined to uncover every last secret of Leo's double life. Hours passed. Eventually, Kathleen dozed off, only to be startled awake by the sound of footsteps echoing along the cold basement floor. She stiffened, holding her breath, straining to hear. A figure emerged, a slender woman with dark curls. She wore worn jeans and a faded T-shirt, the furrow in her brow etched with worry. In one arm she cradled a small child, perhaps a toddler no older than 3. The child was asleep, face pressed against the woman's shoulder. Kathleen's heart lurched. She watched as the woman gently set the child down on the small bed, covering him with a thin blanket. Then she rummaged in a tattered backpack, pulling out a container of leftover food. The woman's eyes were weary, her posture heavy with fatigue. In hushed murmurs, she whispered something to the child, perhaps a lullaby or soft words of comfort. Kathleen's thoughts reeled. Who was this woman? Was she an ex-employee refusing to leave? Had Leo promised her something and reneged? Impulsively, Kathleen edged closer, her curiosity overpowering her caution. As she moved, a crate shifted beneath her foot with a scraping sound. The woman jerked up, eyes darting around the room in alarm. "Hello?" the woman called out, voice trembling. Kathleen's throat felt dry. She slowly emerged from behind the crates, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice shaking. "I didn't mean to frighten you." The woman's eyes flashed with fear. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Kathleen swallowed hard. "My name is Kathleen. My husband bought this house," she managed, her voice thick with conflicting emotions. "I found my way down here. I was just looking for answers." A shadow of confusion crossed the woman's face. "Your husband? Is your husband Mr. Hathaway?" Kathleen's eyes widened. "Yes. You know him?" The woman exhaled shakily, hugging her arms around herself. He gave me money a while back, told me I could stay here until I got back on my feet. Said it was a caretaker's quarters. The child stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Kathleen stared at the woman, trying to piece everything together. Leo had not mentioned anything about a caretaker. He'd purchased this place for Cassandra, as far as she knew, yet there was a woman and a toddler living in the basement. "Why haven't you gone anywhere else?" Kathleen asked softly. She glanced at the sleeping child. "I have nowhere else to go. My name is Elena. My son, Jamie, he needs medical treatment. Mr. Hathaway helped us a bit. I lost my job and my landlord evicted me. I've been trying to save money for Jamie's therapy sessions. I don't have family here." Kathleen's anger grew, though not at Elena. Leo's manipulations were more extensive than she could have imagined. He was playing caretaker to another desperate soul, all while ignoring his own wife. I see," Kathleen managed, pressing a hand to her belly. She felt a fresh wave of nausea, not from the pregnancy this time, but from the disgust swirling inside her. Suddenly, the sound of a door slamming upstairs jolted them both. Male voices echoed down the hallway, accompanied by a woman's angry retort. Recognizing Leo's voice, Kathleen's heart seized. She gestured for Elena to remain quiet. "Don't talk," Kathleen whispered. "I'll see what's happening." She slipped out of the makeshift apartment, quietly walking along the dark corridor. At the foot of the main staircase, she pressed herself flat against the wall, listening. "Leo, you can't just throw money at me and expect me to shut up." Cassandra's voice rang out, trembling with anger. "We had an agreement. If you're backing out, I'm walking." Leo's reply was hushed, but frustration laced his words. "We'll talk about this calmly. I told you, things have changed. I can't give you what you're demanding right now." Cassandra let out a sarcastic laugh. "Changed, huh? You mean because your wife is back in town? Because your precious image might be at risk if she finds out you bought a mansion for me?" Kathleen's blood boiled. So Cassandra did know about the property, obviously, but did she know about Elena? Did she care that a young mother and child were living below her feet? "You have to trust me," Leo insisted. "I can't handle this all at once. My wife is pregnant." "Pregnant?" Cassandra repeated, her tone laced with disbelief. "Unbelievable. So what, I'm supposed to just be your side dish forever? Don't you think I want a family, a stable life?" Their voices grew dimmer as they moved away from the staircase. Kathleen edged closer, careful not to make a sound. She caught sight of them through a gap in the banister, Cassandra's eyes brimming with tears. Leo's face contorted in guilt-ridden frustration. Kathleen's heart hammered. A swirl of conflicting emotions seized her: outrage at Leo, pity for Cassandra's illusions, and empathy for Elena's desperation. She finally saw Leo for who he truly was, a man spinning a web of lies to control the people around him. Her mind raced with possible outcomes. She could confront them now, unleashing her fury in a dramatic showdown. But that might only lead to more chaos. She could slip away and pretend she'd never been there, confronting Leo in private. Or she could use what she learned to plan a measured course of action, one that protected her unborn child, and perhaps even shielded Elena and her son. Kathleen remembered her upbringing, the countless social events where she'd had to maintain composure. She took a steadying breath, letting cold logic overtake hot emotion. If she wanted to secure a future for herself and her child, she needed to be cunning. At last, she quietly retreated back to Elena. She found the young mother crouched near her son, eyes brimming with tears. "Did you hear them?" Elena asked, voice barely above a whisper. Kathleen nodded grimly. "Yes. But let's not draw attention to ourselves." Elena's shoulders sagged. "I'm going to be kicked out, aren't I?" "He doesn't need me here anymore." Kathleen placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I won't let that happen." she promised, though she wasn't entirely sure how she'd fulfill it. We'll figure this out, but for now, I need your help. As they stood in that dank basement, a fragile alliance formed between the two women. Both had been deceived and manipulated by Leo. Each harbored a desperation to protect someone dear: Elena, her child; Kathleen, her unborn baby. I have some financial means, Kathleen explained softly, though most of my assets are tied up with Leo. We're still married, so I have the right to a significant share of everything he's done, including this mansion. I want to secure a safe place for you and Jamie. Elena's eyes glistened. I don't want to impose, but if you help me, I promise I'll do anything in my power to repay your kindness. Kathleen shook her head firmly. Don't think of it that way. We both need each other. If you can testify or give me evidence of how Leo brought you here, it might help my case. In return, I'll make sure you and Jamie aren't left out in the cold. Elena nodded, her expression resolute. I have messages from him, bank deposits, enough to prove he paid for me to stay here. Kathleen's mind flashed with possibilities. With Elena's testimony and the private investigator's findings, she might not only secure a favorable divorce settlement, but also ensure Leo couldn't hide his assets. A wave of relief washed over her, though overshadowed by the heartbreak of the betrayal she'd endured. Stay here tonight, Kathleen advised. I'll return in the morning with a plan. We have to be careful. If Leo suspects we're working together, he'll do everything he can to discredit us both. Elena swallowed hard, glancing at her sleeping son. All right, she agreed. Tomorrow. Early the next morning, Kathleen slipped out of the mansion, heart pounding with every step. She worried Leo or Cassandra might still be there, but the house was eerily silent. Once outside, she hurried to her car, adrenaline flooding her veins. She needed to talk to Benjamin Calder again, to gather every shred of evidence, meticulously. At the same time, she realized she needed a safe haven, someplace Leo wouldn't think to look for her if he discovered her plan. Rather than returning to the penthouse, she decided to check into a modest, discreet hotel. That same day, she booked an appointment with a top divorce attorney recommended by Sophia Russell. The attorney, Harry Lonsdale, an ironic coincidence of names, though she was not related to Kathleen's mother, was known for her fierce advocacy and unwavering moral compass. This is quite the situation, Harry said calmly after reviewing Kathleen's story. We have financial deception, extramarital affairs, a secret property, and a child on the way. Normally, the goal is to avoid going to trial, but with assets like these and a spouse like Mr. Hathaway, litigation might be unavoidable. Kathleen nodded, hands pressed anxiously in her lap. I'm prepared for that. I have a witness living in his mansion basement. She and her child are essentially stranded there. Harry raised an eyebrow. That's a new one. We'll need to document her testimony properly, get it notarized, and ensure her safety. Also, if you're pregnant, we can leverage that fact if it becomes a custody or spousal support issue. A wave of exhaustion washed over Kathleen. She realized this was only the beginning of an arduous legal battle. She thought of Elena and Jamie waiting anxiously in that cold, hidden basement. She couldn't abandon them, not when they were innocent victims of Leo's lies. Back at the penthouse, Leo woke to an empty bed and a string of missed calls from Cassandra. He was still reeling from the previous night's argument, trying to figure out how to salvage the relationship or at least manage the fallout. Part of him missed Kathleen. He'd never intended for his life to become so convoluted. As he sipped his morning coffee, an email from his financial advisor landed in his inbox, flagged urgent. He opened it, scanning the lines that indicated Kathleen had inquired about the financial statements for Hathaway Investments and was seeking a breakdown of personal assets. Alarm bells rang in his head. She was making moves, possibly preparing for a divorce. His phone buzzed. Cassandra's name flashed on the screen. With a resigned sigh, he answered, "Yes? Where are you?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "You left me alone last night." Leo groaned. "I couldn't stay. I had to think. Look, we need to approach this calmly." "Calmly?" Cassandra scoffed. "Your wife is pregnant. You bought me a mansion, but suddenly you're cautious about money. I'm not a toy you can toss aside when it's inconvenient." "I'm not tossing you aside," he insisted, though he sounded more tired than convincing. "Give me time to handle Kathleen. I'll make sure you're taken care of." Cassandra's response was cold. "Fine, but I won't wait forever." The line went dead. Leo set his phone down, head in his hands. His empire, professional and personal, was teetering. For the first time, a jolt of fear struck him. If Kathleen discovered the full extent of his deceit, he might lose more than just his reputation. He might lose his entire fortune. Meanwhile, Cassandra decided to return to the mansion that afternoon, suspecting Leo might show up eventually. She wandered its grand halls, cursing under her breath at the silence. Gripped by curiosity, she decided to explore the basement, hoping to find some antique wine cellar or hidden gem she could boast about. Armed with her cell phone's flashlight, she descended the staircase, winding her way through the musty corridors. Faint scuff marks on the floor suggested recent activity. Eventually, she came across a small suite, a room with a bed and a child's toy. Cassandra's heart lurched. Her gaze fell upon Elena's backpack, the name Jamie sewn into the fabric. "What the?" Cassandra exclaimed, confusion and anger flaring. Just then, Elena emerged from a side room, fear stark on her face. Cassandra's eyes widened. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice echoing in the cramped space. Elena felt her chest tighten. She clutched Jamie's hand, pulling him behind her protectively. I live here," she managed, voice quivering. Cassandra's jaw dropped. "You live here? But this is my house. Leo bought it for me." Terror swirled in Elena's mind. She recalled Kathleen's words, the need for caution. "Mr. Hathaway gave me permission to stay," she stammered. He said I could for as long as I needed." Cassandra's lip curled into a sneer. "You're squatting in my basement. Are you blackmailing Leo?" Elena shook her head vehemently. "No, he helped me when I had nowhere to go." A wave of possessive fury coursed through Cassandra. She marched up to Elena, towering over her. "Listen, you need to get out. Now, I'm the one he cares about, not you, not your kid." Tears sprang to Elena's eyes, but she squeezed Jamie's hand, stepping back. "I don't want any trouble," she said, voice cracking. "I'll leave, just give me some time." Cassandra eyed the frightened child, her expression momentarily flickering with discomfort, but her anger quickly rekindled. "You have until tomorrow," she hissed. "After that, I'm calling the police." When Cassandra stormed upstairs, Elena frantically dialed Kathleen. She had saved Kathleen's number on a scrap of paper, nearly trembling as she keyed it into her phone. Her voice spilled out in a tearful rush when Kathleen answered. "She found me," Elena whispered, her voice shaking. "She wants me out tomorrow. I don't know what to do." Kathleen's blood ran cold. She was sitting in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, nursing a cup of tea. "Where are you now?" "In the basement with Jamie," Elena sobbed. "He doesn't understand what's happening. That woman, she threatened to call the police on us." Kathleen took a deep breath, forcing composure. "Calm down. Don't do anything rash. I'll come by with my attorney later. We'll figure out a way to keep you safe, I promise." Elena sniffled, voice trembling. "Okay, I'll wait." "Stay out of sight until then," Kathleen advised, her heart aching for this vulnerable mother and child. A few hours later, Kathleen arrived at the mansion with Harry Lonsdale by her side. The attorney, professional and unsmiling, carried a slim briefcase under her arm. They managed to enter the estate grounds after a brief conversation with the security guard, who recognized Kathleen's last name from the property records. In the foyer, they were met by Cassandra, who stood with arms crossed and fury simmering in her eyes. "You brought your lawyer?" she spat, glaring at Kathleen. "Yes," Kathleen replied calmly. "Is Leo here?" Cassandra snorted. "He's not, but he'll be here soon, I'm sure." Harry stepped forward, voice crisp. "Miss Mendez, we understand there's a young woman and child residing in the basement. My client has a vested interest in all occupants of this property. We're here to ensure their safety." Cassandra waved a dismissive hand. "That woman was never supposed to be here. She's trespassing. Leo might have let her stay before, but that arrangement is over." Kathleen exchanged a knowing look with Harry. "Well, until we get clarity on the property's ownership, no one is being evicted." Cassandra's anger flared. "Ownership? The deed is in my name. That means I can do whatever I want with my house." Harry smiled coolly. "Ah, but the funds used to purchase this property are in question. My client's husband, Mr. Hathaway, may have funneled community property funds to secure this purchase. Under Washington's community property laws, any asset acquired during the marriage could be considered joint property. This matter will be decided in a court of law, not by you." Cassandra's face drained of color, the magnitude of the situation dawning on her. Kathleen felt a spark of triumph, though she kept it hidden behind her calm facade. At that moment, the front door swung open. Leo entered, breathless, his eyes darting between Cassandra, Kathleen, and Harry. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, voice sharp. Kathleen lifted her chin. "We're settling matters, Leo. Your mistress here threatened to evict a woman and her child from the basement." "Basement?" Leo repeated, confused. But then his eyes widened as he remembered Elena. "Look, that arrangement was temporary. I was just helping her until she could find her footing." Cassandra scoffed. "You call it help? She's living in my house." Harry cleared her throat. "Mr. Hathaway, unless you want a swift legal injunction, I suggest you allow Miss Elena and her child to remain here for the time being. Any forced eviction could be seen as wrongful, given the potential co-ownership of this property." Leo's mind raced, trying to piece it all together. He turned to Cassandra, who was glaring at him as though betrayed. "I was trying to do a good deed," he muttered defensively. Kathleen had heard enough. She stepped forward, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "You lied to me, to Cassandra, and even to Elena. You've spun so many stories that not even you can keep them straight anymore. Well, I'm putting a stop to it." She raised her chin, tears bright in her eyes. "I'm filing for divorce." Leo's face went ashen. "Kathleen, please." Her gaze flickered to Cassandra. "Enjoy the mansion, because if the court rules in my favor, you won't be staying here long." Chaos erupted. Cassandra cried out in fury, accusing Leo of lying to her. Leo tried to calm her while also pleading with Kathleen for a chance to fix things. Harry watched with professional detachment, quietly making notes about Leo's frantic denials. In the turmoil, Elena emerged from the basement, holding Jamie, who clung to her neck, eyes wide with fright. The sight of the toddler's confusion momentarily silenced everyone. Cassandra's anger ebbed, replaced by discomfort, while Kathleen's heart clenched. Leo, seeing the child, frowned. "Elena, you should stay downstairs until this is resolved." Elena bristled. "You think I want to be here, in the middle of your lies and screaming matches?" Cassandra's voice trembled with venom. "You can't stay. I won't have you squatting here." With a trembling sigh, Kathleen stepped forward. "Elena, you don't have to live like this anymore," she said gently. "Pack your things. You can stay at my hotel for now. I'll make sure Jamie gets the help he needs." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, relief flooding her features. Leo opened his mouth to protest, but found no words. For the first time, he stood powerless caught between the mistress he had indulged, the wife he had betrayed, and the woman he had offered charity to without thinking of the long-term consequences. After escorting Elena and Jamie to her car, Kathleen and Harry drove them to the discreet hotel. She booked a separate room for them, reassuring Elena that this arrangement was temporary, only until they could secure something more stable. Once Elena and Jamie were settled, Kathleen and Harry sat down in the lobby to discuss next steps. Harry explained that with the evidence from the private investigator, plus Elena's testimony and any paper trail leading to the mansion's purchase, Kathleen had a strong position. "What about the baby?" Kathleen asked softly, gently resting a hand on her stomach. She was nearing the end of her first trimester, and stress consumed her every waking moment. "Your pregnancy strengthens your claim for spousal support," Harry noted, "but more importantly, it shows you have a stake in the future. If Leo tries to hide assets or shift blame, we can argue that he's endangering the well-being of his unborn child." A pang of sorrow tinged Kathleen's resolve. She had once loved Leo, or at least the version of him she believed in, but the man behind the facade had proven unworthy of her devotion. Back at the mansion, Cassandra paced through the empty rooms, seething with resentment. She had banked on Leo's promises, his wealth, his status to secure her own future. Now the rug had been pulled out from under her. If the courts deemed the mansion community property, Cassandra could lose everything. Leo found her in the living room, arms folded and gaze fixed on a painting she had chosen for the wall. "This is all your fault," she spat, voice low. "You lied to me from the start." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't lie. I just withheld some details." Cassandra snorted. "About your wife, your kid, that woman in the basement. Face it, Leo, you lie to get what you want." Feeling cornered, Leo's temper flared. "You knew what you were getting into. Don't act innocent. You wanted the lavish lifestyle, the fancy home." Cassandra's eyes welled with tears, a mix of anger and heartbreak. "Don't turn this on me," she whispered. "I might have been okay being the other woman, but I never signed up for a labyrinth of secrets." For the first time, Cassandra realized she might have made a catastrophic mistake. To her own shock, she found herself sympathizing with Kathleen. As much as she despised the woman, Cassandra couldn't deny they were both victims of Leo's manipulations in different ways. Over the next few days, Kathleen arranged for Elena and Jamie to meet with a social worker, ensuring Jamie could continue his therapy. She also discovered a private preschool willing to provide a scholarship for Jamie once he was old enough, thanks to her family's philanthropic connections. Slowly, as they navigated the complicated legal process, Kathleen and Elena formed a genuine bond. They spent time in the hotel's small lounge, sipping tea while Jamie played on the rug nearby. Kathleen opened up about her pregnancy, her fears of raising a child alone, and her determination to break free from Leo's control. Elena, too, shared her story. She had been an administrative assistant at one of Leo's smaller firms, Hathaway Solutions. After missing work due to her son's medical appointments, she'd been let go. Leo, hearing about her plight, had offered a temporary arrangement. Desperate, Elena had taken the offer. "I never intended to be a burden," Elena said one afternoon, tears misting her eyes. "But I wanted to believe that someone powerful like him could help without strings attached. I guess I was wrong." Kathleen squeezed her hand. "You're not wrong to hope for kindness. But Leo's kindness was part of a larger web. We'll get you out of it, I promise." As the divorce proceedings began, Leo scrambled to salvage his public image and finances. He hired his own lawyer, an aggressive man named Daniel Pierce, who specialized in high-stakes divorce cases. Pierce advised Leo to paint Kathleen as mentally unstable, claiming her pregnancy hormones made her prone to irrational decisions. When Kathleen heard about the tactic from Harry, she was incensed. "He's trying to question my sanity?" she exclaimed, outraged. "This is so low." Harry nodded grimly. "Unfortunately, it's a common strategy in cases like this. But don't worry, we'll counter with your spotless history, your mother's testimony, and your own stability. Also, Elena's testimony will show Leo's pattern of manipulative behavior. They prepared meticulously, gathering bank records, copies of text messages, property deeds, and affidavits. The day of the first court hearing arrived, tension thrumming through Kathleen's body like a discordant note. She steadied herself, remembering her unborn child's future depended on her courage. In the hushed courtroom, Kathleen sat on one side, Leo on the other. Their attorneys argued passionately before the judge. Harry laid out evidence that Leo had used joint marital funds to purchase the Bellevue mansion, thus rendering it community property. She also introduced evidence of Leo's affair and his secret arrangement with Elena, painting a comprehensive picture of deceit. Pierce countered, attempting to discredit the witnesses. He accused Elena of being a freeloader and implied that Kathleen was orchestrating a smear campaign to exact revenge. The judge, an older woman with steel-grey hair, observed everything with a measured gaze. At one point, Elena took the stand. Nervous but resolute, she recounted how Leo had offered her the basement suite and promised support. The entire courtroom fell silent when she described her fear and humiliation at being threatened by Cassandra. Leo stared at his hands, avoiding Elena's gaze. Cassandra, although not present in the courtroom, lingered as a spectre in everyone's minds, especially Kathleen's. During a recess, Leo approached Kathleen in a corridor outside the courtroom. "Look," he began, voice subdued, "I know I messed up, but this doesn't have to end in mutual destruction. Think about our child. Do you really want us to be at war?" Kathleen studied him, recalling the early days of their marriage when she admired his ambition and charm. She exhaled, feeling the sadness of what might have been. "Leo, you made your choices. This is just me protecting myself and our baby." His eyes flickered with remorse. "I can't undo what I've done. But if you agree to a settlement, I promise I'll give you everything you need for the baby, for yourself. We can keep this civil." Kathleen closed her eyes, torn between the desire for resolution and the understanding that Leo's promises were worth little. "I won't settle for scraps of what we built together," she said quietly. "I'll do whatever it takes to secure a life for myself and our child." He looked away, conceding defeat in that moment. "Then I guess we'll see each other in court," he muttered, walking off. Days stretched into weeks as the legal process unfolded. Harry continued to build a strong case. Financial records revealed that Leo had funneled nearly $3 million from joint accounts into the mansion's purchase. Moreover, text messages between him and Cassandra showed a premeditated plan to maintain her lifestyle at Kathleen's expense. The tension took a toll on Kathleen's health. Her OB-GYN warned her about stress-related complications, urging her to rest more. With a supportive friend network, especially Sophia Russell and her mother Harriet, who had made a remarkable recovery, Kathleen managed to keep her spirits afloat. Meanwhile, Cassandra found herself marginalized. Leo stopped visiting her regularly, focusing on damage control. The mansion stood as a monument to their failed affair, its halls echoing with unfulfilled promises. Fearing she might be left with nothing, Cassandra contemplated reaching out to Kathleen's lawyer to testify. But pride held her back. She couldn't stomach the idea of siding with Leo's wife. Finally, after months of legal wrangling, the day of reckoning arrived. The judge ruled in Kathleen's favor, stating that the Bellevue mansion was indeed marital property. She also granted Kathleen a generous financial settlement, including spousal support and additional funds for the unborn child's upbringing and education. As a final note in her ruling, the judge addressed Elena's situation. With Kathleen's assurance, Elena was granted temporary residency in one of Kathleen's family properties until she could secure a job and stable housing. The court recognized her as a witness who had suffered from Leo's manipulations. Though no formal charges were brought against him, only the scorn of public opinion. Leo, humbled and financially bruised, stood in the courtroom as the verdict was delivered. He risked losing a substantial portion of his fortune. Worse, he had lost respect in business circles. Clients who once admired him now viewed him with disdain, aware of the scandal. Kathleen walked out of the courtroom, head held high, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. She paused in the hallway, taking a moment to let the gravity of her victory sink in. It wasn't just a legal triumph, it was the reclaiming of her dignity and future. Elena waited for her outside the building, Jamie clinging to her hand. When Kathleen appeared, Elena embraced her, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved us." Kathleen smiled softly, wiping her own tears. "We saved each other," she said, placing a gentle hand on her belly, where her baby grew day by day. Later that evening, Cassandra packed her belongings in the mansion. She glanced around the lavish rooms and realized none of it felt like home. She had learned a bitter lesson. Illusions of grandeur pale when built on deception. In the coming months, Kathleen finalized her divorce and focused on her pregnancy. She found a serene cottage by a lake where she moved to begin anew. She kept in touch with Elena, celebrating small milestones in Jamie's progress. Sometimes she even corresponded briefly with Cassandra, who apologized in a restrained email for her role in the affair. As Kathleen watched the sunset over the tranquil waters near her new home, she felt a stirring of life in her womb, a gentle reminder that hope, like dawn, always returns. She closed her eyes, whispering a silent vow. Never again would she let anyone take advantage of her love and trust. With the past behind her and a bright future beckoning, Kathleen Hathaway stepped forward into a world of possibilities, finally free from the mansion's dark shadows. Thank you for joining me on this heart-pounding journey of betrayal, hidden lives, and unexpected alliances. What began as one millionaire's lavish gift to a mistress quickly spiraled into an explosive confrontation, ultimately freeing a pregnant wife and a desperate young mother from the shackles of one man's deceit. In the end, the promise of a new beginning triumphed, with Kathleen and her unborn child securing both financial security and renewed hope for the future. If this dramatic tale kept you on the edge of your seat, please remember to like this video, share it with friends who love a suspenseful saga, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel. Your support allows me to continue bringing you stories filled with twists, turns, and the kind of relentless drama that holds nothing back. Stick around, because there's so much more to come.